Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show. This is meant to be a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property in that order. Today's special guest is much more than just an EOS implementer. He is a vision architect that helps you get traction into living your best life. Clinton Crawford, stoked to have you on. Tell us a little bit about this journey you're about to embark on.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I'm stoked to be on here. Our initial conversation was really rad. We definitely linked up a lot, and I appreciate the value that you're working to help give other implementers and people, CEOs, whoever it may be, that are taking control of their life and helping share that information with others that might be useful in some way. Journey I'm about to embark on. You talking about Indonesia?
Yeah, you're gearing up for quite a travel. So right
Yeah.
now you're based in around Southern California, big
hmm
into surfing. Your talk about being an architect of vision and creating your vision and creating your life. The story that you had just told me, um, I think that alone, obviously we're going to get into more than just that, but the idea of visualizing the wave, catching it and riding it is goes further than just business goal settings. It goes further than just, the idea of surfing as an interest. It's really about making your ideal life and living the best life.
Yeah, no, it's definitely about intentionally designing your life. Um, so I had at the beginning of 2024, I had set a goal that I wanted to spend the month of November in Indonesia as like a celebratory gift to myself. I had had like all these opportunities to go to Indonesia in the past. When I was 16, 15, 16, I had had the dream, the typical surfer dream. I want to find a remote island with really no one around, find a perfect left-hand point break. I want to build my dream surf location, house, setup. And I'd always had the vision to create what is the most perfect example of a master planned community that's sustainable, ecologically friendly, that moving forward people would use as the example or the blueprint of how to do that. And so fast forward 2024, set my goal for the year to spend the month of November in Indonesia. That year had been a great year. Things have been going well. And to be totally honest, things were going so well, I completely forgot to check in on my yearly goals, which is normally something that, like, as an EOS implementer, I'm always business wise, I was doing that, but personally, I wasn't as much.
Hmm.
Things were going great. I was stoked. I would check in occasionally, hit a quarterly goal. Fast forward um, to like September, and I had gotten reached out to someone by someone on LinkedIn. This guy was like, oh, I've got a friend who owns a business in Indonesia. He wants to implement EOS. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, that obviously, sparks my interest. And we met up in person in Newport, had a conversation, and he was like, we want to get you out to Indonesia to implement EOS. What do we need to do? So have the conversation, speak with the CEO, do some negotiating, have the conversation, and then I go on a sailing trip to Catalina with a buddy for a couple of days, off grid, just hanging out, fishing, diving, and I get back and the money's in my bank account. So I'm like, oh my God, like I'm going to Indonesia. This is crazy. There's no implementers in Indonesia. So nobody really knew about it there. So I end up, without trying, without working towards it, spending the month of November in Indonesia. Now, it got a little bit crazier because I'd been doing this work with these girls at this place called Twin Waves, and they're network spinal therapists. And the
Hmm.
best way to explain it is it's chiropractic work mixed with Reiki. I'm sure they would do a much better job and they'd probably hate me for explaining it like that. But basically, it's this work where you're working to realign your central nervous system
Right.
through energy work, and they have the background of chiropractics. In the sessions, you're doing a lot of breath work and visualization, working to clear your mind. So the person that I am, I'm like, oh, cool, this is like a visualization thing, part of it. I'm going to take some psychedelics and I'm going to go do this. It's an aid. It helps me be more creative, opens up my mind. So I'm doing a session with them prior to getting this call. And my dream, like I had said, was to always have this, dream surf destination. So I'm using this session to create iterations of what this dream surf destination looks like because I'm a huge proponent in the more detail which you create around your dream, the more likely you are to call it in.
Sure.
So I did like 10 different iterations. First I envisioned what the wave looked like. It's a left-hand point break. And then the next iteration, the foreground is white sandy beach with a crystal clear blue lagoon and palm trees fringing the beach. Next iteration, there's a multi-thousand foot volcano off in the background with a peninsula wrapping out and around. And I did all these iterations and got really clear on what I wanted the dream surf destination to look like. Turns out the CEO from this business, his name's Iqbal, and his wife Sheila are from this area in southern Sumatra. They want me to experience where they're from so I can get a better idea of who they are. So they send me to this surf region in southern Sumatra. And I show up, booked myself a place on the left-hand point that existed there. And first day I go for a walk on the beach. I round the bend on the point and I look off in the distance and the exact scene that I had visualized in my head was sitting there right in front of me. White sand beach, fringed by palm trees, crystal clear blue lagoon, left-hand point break reeling along the reef, and off in the distance is a peninsula sticking out and a multi-thousand foot volcano behind it. And it was just like a holy shit moment. Like this is real. And ended up purchasing a piece of land there. Um, got to meet some of the government officials, and I spent the whole month of November in Indonesia, completely forgetting that that was my objective. I didn't realize it until after the fact when I got home and I was resetting my annual goals. And it's kind of along those lines of the vision casting and vision creation, in the sense of, we were talking about it last time, but it was effortless. It all made sense. But I think that was a result of, or I know that that was more of a result of like, 10 years of being like, what is my long-term goal? Moving in that direction, but more so having an understanding of all the opportunities that came in front of me over those years. The lens that I was viewing the opportunities from was different from a lot of my peers. I knew what I wanted pretty clearly, which I'll say I was lucky to have. I don't think most people at a young age know what they want very clearly. And that aided me in this process where then every opportunity that was presented to me was looked at through the lens of, okay, in what area does this move me one step closer to being where I want to be? And if it did move me one step closer, I said yes.
One of the quotes that I love around vision casting, goal setting, I like vision casting because to me, goal setting feels almost smaller. But the idea that you can have anything in the world that you want, but you cannot have everything, and that in order to get what is you want the most, you have to say no to all the things that do not lead you closer to that.
Yeah, I
So
100% agree with that.
you can negotiate with anything and everyone except with the your core values and except with your vision. Like don't um the last quote that rings true to this story is you can get anything you want as long as you know and are willing to pay the price.
Mhm.
And just from hearing your story now and offline or chats before, it seems like when when you were telling me about the deal where you're negotiating for the property and for the land, you kind of had this intuitive feel versus the spreadsheet calculation to try and make the existing offer work. You're like, No, I think I'll wait." And then 30 days later, a new offer, and you're like, we're getting closer, but I think so." And then it was like your third or fourth iteration within the negotiation. You weren't forcing it. You were still interested, but you weren't, there was no hardball tactic. It just seemed like now finally you can say yes to the real offer that aids and abets your goal.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that line of thinking where it's like, hey, almost the budget of your vision casting or strategy?
Mm. Yeah, I think the big thing on that was like, well, when you say budget, what do you mean?
Great question. So when I define budgeting in terms of strategy for clients and for anyone, I don't just think of it as in the terms of like what is the fiscal cost and how are we going to afford that. I
Yeah, I
think of
didn't
it
think about
between And I think honestly, money is like the lowest priority for budgeting,
that.
but I think of it at like how much energy will this take
Hmm.
as the number one thing? Like how much effort, how much sacrifice, whether that, is this something that I get stoked on and because I like doing this, it gives me more energy, so then the cost kind of goes down, but it may take time. And then the next one is time. What's my runway? What's my time horizon? And then finally, it's like, okay, what are the monetary requirements in order to do something. That's how I consider budgeting.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm definitely aligned with that. The budgeting on this one was so like, and I think this example is a really good one for it. When I showed up, I knew I wanted to buy a piece of land there. I knew instantaneously that this was the place I wanted to do it. Um, and I wasn't in and at the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, I want to buy it right now. I want to do this immediately. And then I calmed myself down. Um, I had friends be like, hey, take a deep breath. And I found a couple plots that I really liked on the beach. Great, great deals. And for one reason or another, things kept falling through. And I had met this one guy who had been living out there for 16 years. Um, South African dude. Him and I both had similar autoimmune conditions. So we bonded over that. We talked a lot about how like we wanted to keep this area um, fairly to a certain degree undeveloped, create some like land preservation so we could keep it special. That's part of what makes these surf destinations so unique is their lack of infrastructure. It adds this magic to it. And we were both on board with it. He had a plot of land on the point, and he had put out an offer that wasn't really like something I wanted to spend that kind of money on. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, we're chilling. I appreciate it though, but like we can still be boys.
Yeah.
And then I keep looking. Um, Time goes by, he comes back, he's like, hey, you know, I'll sell you half the plot. Price was still like not something I wanted to bite off. So I was like, no, I appreciate it. Thank you though. And it's a primo lot. Like you walk out the lot, you paddle out across the lagoon at high tide, and you go over the reef and you're in the lineup. Like kind of an ideal situation. And I wanted it, but it just wasn't. I was like, it's all good. Like the right thing will come my way if I'm patient. And then, he comes back again and he's like, hey, I'm looking for a potential business partner in my real estate company. Your background, your experience, your mindset, all of that aligns. And I think like we could potentially be really good business partners. So he's like, I am willing to offer you, half the plot at X price with seller financing, give you a place to stay when you first get there. I have an extra spot for you to live in across the street from the lot while you build your house. And then, we can explore over this first year the potential of us going to business together. I'll teach you the ins and outs. At the end of this year, if we decide that we don't want to work together, you can form your own business. I'll transfer the title of the land to that. Um, and if we decide to go in business, we can get running. So it was this really cool opportunity, I think good example of like just being a being yourself, being who you truly are. Um, Not having an ulterior motive, just connecting with people genuinely, sticking to your morals, your values, your guns, and then as you continue to do that, with consistency, you put out this vibration, through budgeting effectively towards your energy and your time. Like, could I have done those things at like the higher price point? Yeah. From an energy standpoint, it would have probably taken energy away because I would have been stressing a little bit about how am I going to make this work? Okay, I have to do X, Y, and Z now because I went over like what I was willing to spend. From a time perspective, I was like, I have time, like just take it easy. Remember to protect your energy, sift through everything. And as you continue to resonate with what is truly you and what feels right through the process, you create a vibration within yourself. Not to sound woo-woo, but like everything's frequency.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the central nervous system and making sure that you do things, whether that's chiropractic work, meditation, um, breath work, to
Mhm.
make sure that your central nervous system stays as optimally charged as it could be, in optimal health. I think that too often entrepreneurs will tax their CNS to try and save money. And it's like you're trading a less valuable currency for a more valuable currency. Or
Mhm.
I'm sorry, and vice versa.
Yeah,
Yeah, like they're taxing their central nervous system to the point where they could their health may be bankrupt, their sanity, their peace of mind might go bankrupt to try and do a deal for a certain dollar figure, whereas you don't have to sacrifice either. And you're
yeah.
kind of an example of that.
And then once that, all panned out, it just everything I had been looking for, um, had showed up to me in ways that I would have never expected. And that's kind of like I think the law of the universe is like the more you put out, the universe presents you the opportunities that you're seeking in unexpected ways.
Right.
And by budgeting effectively and making sure I was just budgeting my energy and my time effective.
And we're back. We're talking about how the frequency of your central nervous system rolls into everything that we do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like the big thing that people overlook a lot is because like frequency and like what you're emitting as a human is palpable. Like when you walk into a room, it's not something that we can. I was listening to something recently on modern wisdom about high agency. And I think that's like a really good example of frequency. You can't really explain it. Like I couldn't put into words necessarily what high agency is, but I could draw you a picture. I could give you an example, but like I couldn't give you a definition of high agency necessarily. But I think that vibration is something you can feel. It's a high frequency where like you walk into a room and there's some people that you just talk to that you're like, wow, that guy, like I feel calmer after talking to him. And I think that's a good example of the hot, like the vibration that you put out.
You know, there's a correlation between some of the most successful people I met. Doesn't have to be monetarily, it could be in their field.
Mhm.
And how charged, whether it's, positive, calm, and like energized or just good you feel after interacting with them, and how you might not know that they've done this thing that's epic or achieved some sort of success, but there is a correlation there. I don't know if you found that exact same thing. And I've also
Oh,
been around people that the energy is off and you're like, 2 months, 3 months, a year later, you see it in the newspaper for some crime that came out
hmm,
and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Don't know why it
yeah,
made sense, but it eventually came out to make sense.
100%. I think the frequency thing is just like, is this person, I guess the best way to put it is this person living their truth?
Mm.
And like that's such a vague term as well to throw out there. That your truth means you're doing like you've put in the time to understand, and maybe you haven't. Some people just live their truth without even realizing and having put in work, and some people get lucky there. But like just doing the things that fulfill you. And if you're spending your time doing the things that fulfill you, Whether you're a millionaire or whether you make 50 grand a year, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't
If
matter.
you're doing the thing that fulfills you and you're happy because of that, that's the frequency, and like getting, so the more of this frequency that you put out, the more of it, we were talking about it, the law of attraction. You're calling it in. The universe matches frequencies regularly. So like the more that you're putting out and doing the things that are the right thing for you, it allows you to get more of what you want from the universe. I mean, that's kind of like the whole point of, what I'm doing. That's really my mission, is to help people. You can put it in the woo-woo terms of aligning their frequencies, but it's helping people intentionally design their world so they can call in more of what they want.
You're helping people create their calling and then achieve that because
Yeah.
I liken setting and obtaining business goals to climbing a mountain. It's just an easy example where, look, I mean, it's going to take 20,000 steps to get up that to that summit. It's not going to be a straight line. There will be some points where you need to take a rest and, divert and, understand that path is there. But it's really just the simplicity of one step at a time, no matter what. And that pebble in your shoe has a higher likelihood of you not obtaining your goal than the actual elevation change.
Yeah. 100%. And then there's the other side of it. I just had an intentional life client that one of her personal goals was to play piano in public. And it was this super, because like, with EOS, we're setting quarterly rocks that are aligned with your 1 year, that are aligned with your 3 year, that are aligned with your 10 year. So with the intentional life program, I started, our intentional lifestyle design, I started, doing a blend. Like, what are the things you as an individual want to accomplish in your life? It can be silly, it can be serious, it can be whatever the fuck you want it to be. And one of hers was to play piano at a piano bar in front of a group of people. Um, and she initially had it as a year goal. And I challenged her and I was like, "Do you know how to play the piano?" She's like, "Yes." I was like, "Okay.
You're halfway there.
How many songs do you know?" She's like, "5." And I was like, "Okay. So why is like, what are the steps that it would take for you to get in front of a group of people and play piano?" She's like, "Well, it would probably be just like having a handful of songs memorized and then picking a time and a place." And I was like, "Okay, is that going to take you a year?" She's like, "No." And I was like, "All right, how long is that going to take?" She's like, "Well, I don't know the songs perfectly." I'm like, "All right, well, do they have to be perfect?" And she's like, "No, but I'd like them to be." And I'm like, "All right, so you want some practice time?"
Okay.
Okay, like, do you know a location you could do it? She's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "All right, pick a date."
You have to pick a date.
And she was like, "Oh, well, let me get good at the songs first." And I was like, "No, just pick a date." I was like, "You run your own insurance business. Like, you know how to set goals and accomplish things. Like, just pick a date." And she picked a date. It was 3 months out. She practiced the song. She went in and she did it. And is she going to do anything with that moving forward? No. But for her, it was conquering the fear of what others thought of her. And she didn't realize that in the moment. But after she did it, she was like, by going and doing that, I wiped away the fear of what others think of me.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to see, and it didn't take much. Another really good example of like, sometimes the peak of the mountain is closer than you think. Sometimes we push it off really far.
I love the quote that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. It's like the hardest part is taking the first step, and once you do, you're like, oh, there's ground underneath me. I'm not going to fall in and drown.
Hmm. Yeah, no, and there was the other example is like one of my first intentional lifestyle design clients, a buddy of mine's a commercial banker. And we sat down, we're doing the 10 year, like, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Like, what's your dream life look like? And he owned a home service franchise business doing 1 million in revenue. That was his dream. That was like the 10-year thing. And
Okay.
I was like, cool, that's rad. Hell yeah, dude. All right. What are the 6 major steps that need to happen over the next 10 years or in general for you to have started this business? And we sat down and we wrote out the 6 major steps. And we both are looking at it on the whiteboard in my yard. And we're like, is that going to take 10 years?
No.
He was like, no. I was like, all right, how long would it take you to do all this? He's like, 6 months.
Yeah.
And fast forward a year, he started the business and they're going to do 750K in revenue this year. So fast forward 2 years from what he thought was going to take him 10 is going to take him what, 2.5?
That one conversation, Clinton, just took his time horizon for his goal to reduce it by 80%.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because you helped him to get the energy to save on the time. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what when I talk about budgeting, that's what I mean. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you get very clear on your goals and you have the self-awareness and you can identify the obstacles, it's not that the every like it, I love the quote that it's not the weight, it's how you hold it.
Yeah.
And like you just basically just like form checked his weight and you're like, look, you can look how much easier it is to carry. It's actually 80% easier to
Mm-hmm.
carry this goal to get
No,
from
that's a
point A to
good one.
point
I hadn't
B.
heard that before. That's right on point.
And that's exactly what I wanted to hammer home on with the budgeting thing. So I'm going to use your example as
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I talked to somebody that went after that had a client with a 10-year goal after a conversation in his yard, reduced that time horizon by 80%. And like I think at the end of the day, people want to talk to advisors to increase their energy, reduce their time, and make the cost known. Because I feel like so much with life, not how it's going to roll out, but like they don't know how much it actually takes. And usually it takes less than people think.
Yeah, no, that's a huge, I think, shortcoming of what we're taught. It's not like a normal thing to create this plan of like how long are these things actually, because some of those things, you know, you don't always reduce it by 80%,
Not always.
but I think 80% of the time you could probably reduce it by 80%.
Yeah.
So and it definitely, I think that's why a lot of people, and that's why I work with my own coaches, like, because I'm at my own fault for, the Indonesia thing's a prime example. Like it can happen way faster than you think. You just have to take the time to step back and actually look at it all.
Man, I want to share this my first law of attraction run in, like the first one I can remember in my own timeline.
Yeah.
Growing up where I grew up in Pennsylvania, wrestling was very, very popular sport. I have family out in Iowa. It's just been something that's been in my family, not passed on from my father, but it was a culturally significant thing. And I got into it. And I just remember that I had friends that were, all American, junior high, elementary, traveling all, and I was just like, well, I never traveled to these big tournaments. So I set the goal to be like the county number, like gold medal in the county. This
Yeah.
was February 6th, 2006. Still remember the date because, we were doing lots of visualizations and I went crazy every day and put up in my mirror so I could see on this date, you're going to be the county champion at this weight. And in the middle of the season, one of the guys who had been in that bracket kicked my butt, like just brutal. I just got my butt kicked bad.
Yeah.
And he was one of those guys that was an All-American, the ones, the things that I feared. But I still believed that I was going to be the champ. I was like, whatever happens, who knows? Like, didn't have a perfect record. I go in and we're on the opposite side of the bracket, and then he loses the match before the finals. And I just had this like wave of realization that, like, oh, my visualization paid off. Like I'm definitely going to win. And I beat the guy that beat him in 20 seconds.
Hell
And then
yeah.
I was just like, huh. The scary thing that I was so worried about, the other person who had beat me, there's no way I could beat him. Didn't even have to worry. Like that wasn't a thing that the universe or God put in my way as an obstacle. It was
Hmm.
the fear of that thing. And then just letting go of the fear of that thing made it all happen.
Hmm. And I think my strongest example of like how in control you are and how you can create what you want was like when I was 27, I was running my own business. I was VP of sales at another. I was going through relationship issues. We're implementing EOS into this business, so it's my exposure to it. And dude, I was way too stressed out. Like I'd always, to a degree, had a pretty intentionally designed life where I was like doing things my way. There was a reason I was spending the amount of time I wanted to work. And then I got wrapped up in trying to make as much money as possible.
Mm.
I was in these really high level conversations with like, I was talking with like the governor of Guam. I was talking to the king of Palau and Tonga, and I felt a lot of pressure, um,
Yeah,
as
I
a result
bet.
of all that. And
Understandable.
yeah, and I was overworking, and I was just really stressed out. Didn't feel like I had a grip on everything, and my emotions. All the pillars in my life were not strong. I was, basically looking for a reason to stop drinking because I was like, if I stop drinking a couple nights a week, I'll get back a ton of mental clarity. I won't have hangovers. I'll get 36 hours back of like focus. And right now
Sure.
I'm at a point where that would be so useful. And I couldn't do it. I'm 27 and I give into the
Mm.
peer pressure of my friends. They're all just, you know, they're saying all the things that 27-year-old guys say to get their friends to drink with them.
I've been there.
Which yeah, it was like it was tough. And but none of them were in the position I was in. None of these friends were running their own business. None of them were executives within a company. So it was like a little challenging to help them understand what I was going through. So the company I'm at, the founder has me go through an energy clearing. And I'm like,
What does that entail?
yeah, I was like, what the fuck is that? That was my exact thought. It's like this sounds stupid. Um, It was a phone call with an energy worker, this guy who was an ex-gold mine executive. And he was like, so basically what he was doing was he can read people's energy and he can help you clear energetic blockages. Blocks, yeah, blocks. And I was
Mhm.
like, all right, whatever, sure. The dude who was the founder, though, was one of the original guys in Orange Theory, had a crazy exit, was the same age as me. Like,
Holy shit.
the dude had what I wanted
Yeah.
professionally. So I was like, all right, you've got something figured out. I don't. I will listen to you. And I'm a firm believer if you don't go 100% in whatever you're doing, you're going to get 0% out of it.
Interesting.
So
You
like if
can't
I'm
be
going to,
half pregnant.
yeah. So if I'm going to like go do this energy clearing, I'm going to commit to
Yeah.
at least the time frame that I'm on the phone call.
Hmm.
So I'm like, what blockages am I having? What intention can I set? Oh, I can't find the willpower to stop drinking. I have a block. That's kind of obvious. So I'm going to try to find the willpower to stop drinking. Go into this phone call, and the dude mentions, we're just chatting. He mentions the word mentors at one point, and I just like broke down crying. Very random. It was not expected at all. That's not really my MO.
Yeah, yeah.
And, we do some deeper digging. And it turned out I was grieving the loss of this mentor I had had when I was 14, this dude, Richard. Um,
Okay.
I'd met Richard at the gym. My dad knew him. He was part of the Department of Education in New Jersey, professor, taught a master's course at Fairfield University. He taught a course on human studies, so the framework of the subconscious mind and how energy is exchanged between humans mixed with business. And I meet this guy, and we just have this instant connection, like soul connection. It was like we knew each other. And at 14, I go up to the guy, and I'm like, where do I know you from? And from that kind of like blossomed this really cool mentor mentee relationship where we'd be walking on the boardwalk, or like I'd be going for a run on the boardwalk, I'd run into him at the beach, and then we would talk for a couple hours. And he would explain to me his course in human studies on our walks when I'm 14. And everything just clicked. It was all the stuff that I had thought about how the universe worked and how like he taught me a lot of the stuff that I use now today to get what I want and help other people get what they want. But it was like really profound to get this information and for it to register at the age of 14. So I got a master class on a master's course in human studies at 14, which was super impactful. Time goes by. Richard was 87 when I met. And then when I'm like 22, he dies. I find out in this weird way because I'm working at a restaurant. His nephew ends up being my table. I asked them how he's doing. They told me he died the day before. I'm like, all right, that's crazy, but not that crazy. Like he was in his 90s. I'm in my party stage. I'm like, whatever. Like Richard was old. Like that makes sense. He did
Right.
some cool stuff. And then they come back a day later and hand me a pamphlet from his funeral. I
Mm.
open up the pamphlet. The first page I open it up to is the last thing Richard ever said to me. Unless the quote is, your character remains undefined unless tested. And that was something that kind of like resonated with me over time. And, I'm a white dude that grew up in a middle class neighborhood with parents that love each other, with a white picket fence, with two cats and a dog. Like, there was never,
From the outside, it's like, what does Clinton have to worry about?
well, and no, not even from the outside. What did Clinton have to worry about?
Yeah,
Nothing. My life was super chill. Doors were open for me. I had nothing but opportunity. And I totally recognize that. Like, I'm not blind to the fact that I have privilege. But I think there's a lot of white guys, and I shouldn't even say white, there's a lot of men who probably resonate with this. I wanted adversity in my life. I wanted
sure.
something really fucked up to happen so I could see if I was the person that I thought I was, because it's easy to be positive and happy-go-lucky when things go your way.
I mean, everyone, if they're being honest and if they are have ambition, does want a challenge
Yeah, for sure.
or should want a challenge. But to
I
your
agree.
point is that's such a quote, man. So the quote is your character remains undefined unless tested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it just you don't know.
Yeah. It's just potential then.
Yeah, which is great. Super cool.
Potential's
But like
fine, but
you got
like,
to test it. It's
yeah,
like saying like a car can go from 0 to 60 and like you saying a car can go from 0 to 60 in 1 second. That's great. But like have you done it? And they're like, "No." Well, then it's like, okay. So it's in theory.
right.
Great. Um so, Richard was super impactful at this stage when he dies. All this weird stuff happens, but I'm like, I'm not thinking about it. I'm 22, I'm partying. I'm having fun. I'm not
Yeah.
like deep into this emotional world. So I'm just like whatever, time goes by. This energy clearing, we fast forward to this energy clearing. This was me grieving the loss of Richard. Made a lot of sense. I was like, I can buy that. That's cool. That makes sense. Like I never, yeah, grieved him.
You probably wouldn't have even thought about it if you didn't have that call.
No. And I was like, all right, cool. Like that was very interesting. Nice job. I have no idea how you did that. That was rad. He's like, all right, now I'm going to take you on this meditation and I'm going to take you to a place called the quantum. Now, I'm sure we're probably going to lose a bunch of people on this one here. A bunch of people are going to stop listening, but like the quantum is this energetic field, this other dimension where it's pure energetic existence without the attachment to physical form. And this guy's like, we're going to go there. I was like, you sound fucking nuts. Like,
Have you ever taken theoretical physics courses?
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So you're familiar with the twin slit experiment?
yeah.
All right. So I'm tuned in. You got my attention.
Okay. So he's like, we're gonna go there. I'm like, you sound like a nut job, but sure. Like you did just make me cry for an hour. I'll buy it. Once again, I'm gonna go, like, something I don't. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
100% because I'll get nothing out of it otherwise. So close my eyes, we do this meditation. Lo and behold, I totally transcend this dimension and enter the quantum. Totally sober on the phone. Like no assistance. And I'm like, it's the same feeling as if you're about to fall asleep in a hot sunroom in the summer. It's like 12 o'clock on a summer day. It's 85 degrees out. You're about to doze off into a nap. You're still like not fully asleep. Somebody walks through the room. You don't see him. Maybe a dog walks through the room. You can feel the presence of another entity in the room, but you don't know who it is, what it is, but you can feel it.
Mhm.
That's what the quantum felt like. Just energy passing by its darkness. It's not scary. It's not this, but there's no understanding of self. I'm just
So
something bigger.
it's a perfect example, that feeling that you have, that feeling that anyone has, right? They know when there's eyes on them. If you're in a group of people, people can feel when they're being stared at. And I feel like it goes back to one of your coaching clients who wanted to play piano in public. It was fear of that feeling. The idea of quantum physics or this realm of the quantum it boils down to something that the twin slit experiment exposed, which is that matter changes when observed.
Mhm.
And anyway, I just want
Yeah, no, it's
carry on.
crazy.
That's a bit narrative for anyone listening, trying to give a little bit of background about what you're talking about to make it like, no, this is science. There's tests out there. Look it up. Like, it's not
Yeah,
woo woo BS. Like, there's backing behind this.
no, 100%. And I appreciate bringing in that example. So I'm in the quantum. I'm just feeling energy pass by, and the guy's like, "Okay, now open up the space for Richard to come to you." And I'm not thinking dead person, alive person. I'm just like in this space.
Yeah, the Richard
Anything's
that you
possible.
remember.
And Richard's energy comes to me. And Richard and I, which was like, what the fuck? We have this exchange. There's no words, it's just energy and feeling. And Richard's like, you're doing great. I'm proud of you. I've been here the whole time downloading all the information you need to know. You're prepared for what's ahead, and I love you. And then he leaves. And I come out of this energy clearing, this meditation. I'm like, dude, what the fuck was that? That was insane. Also, at the same time, I'm talking to this guy, not looking at him. I'm talking to him. I'm like, that was crazy. But also, fuck you. Like you actually just made everything way harder for me. I'm super stressed out. I just reconnected with a dead mentor.
You want a challenge?
Yeah, and I was like, well, how does this help me? I had no idea. I was
You
just
asked
like,
for it.
and I was like, dude, who am I going to talk to about this? Right? Like, I've got no one's going to listen to me. This is a hard sell. I sound like a lunatic.
Hmm.
I felt like a lunatic, but I knew it was real because it was the most real thing that's ever happened. So, leave the energy clearing, go back to my life. A couple days later, I start getting sick. And the sickness thing, I'm like, it's COVID. I surfed after it rained in Southern California. The water's dirty. I'm
Oh,
like,
that
what?
was around the same time, 2020.
Yeah. And, you know, a couple days go by, it gets more intense. My body aches, chills, fever, this really intense stomach pain. And then I look in the mirror one day and I'm completely yellow, just like jaundice to the
Liver.
highest degree. And going to the hospital, doctors tell me I'm having an episode of liver cirrhosis. And I'm just like, fuck. Okay. Why? Like, why am I having this episode of liver cirrhosis? And we do some more digging, and they're like, hey, we think you have this rare autoimmune liver condition called primary sclerosing cholangitis. And yeah, so what's going to happen is you're going to have these episodes of liver cirrhosis fairly frequently moving forward. We don't know much about the disease. You're an extremely rare case, and this is an extremely rare disease. We've never seen someone your age, of your sex, have this disease at this stage.
Clinton, can I pause?
Yeah,
This happened after you went for an energy clearing about
4 days
stopping
later.
drinking,
Yeah,
and stopping drinking was the intention.
yep,
What the fuck?
I know.
Talk about getting what you
Yeah,
want in the weirdest ways
yeah, I know. It was, and I wasn't thinking of it like that at the
at the
beginning.
time, sure.
Yeah, and then the doctors are like, so you're gonna have this liver episode, these cirrhosis episodes every like year to 2 years.
Hmm.
We don't have any way of stopping it. It's a progressive condition. And eventually what's gonna happen is like you're gonna have so many episodes of cirrhosis that you're gonna go into either total liver failure or get cancer in 20 years.
Jeez.
So to manage the severity of these episodes, you can't drink or do drugs again. And I'm like, what did you just say? And they're like, you can't drink or do drugs again. And I was like, this is the greatest fucking day of my life. I'm like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me because I went through an energy clearing 4 days ago to find the willpower to stop drinking, connect with a dead mentor who tells me he's downloading everything I need to know and I'm prepared for what's ahead. And then I get told that I can't drink anymore for medical reasons. I manifested this thing and backtrack even further.
Dude.
I have my opportunity to define my character finally. So it was just this really unique, and this intentional lifestyle design program is a result of this occurring. This was like me being like, all right, so we dug deeper because I know I created this thing at this stage, but I'm trying to get some like scientific reasoning as well. Like, how did I do this? Because I'm a little thrown off. You got a question?
No, but it's just crazy to me that you set out with the intention to overcome challenges and then you just get that within right away. So the timing is just wild. Number
Yeah.
two, um, I think that in order to tell a great story, there needs to be plot elements of um, antagony or antagonist.
Hmm.
So, like, I think when anyone can overcome most people's biggest fear, if they're being honest, is either death or public speaking.
Hmm.
And you kind of had to overcome both of those in your
Yep.
journey,
Hmm.
right? So that makes you anything else in your resume. We don't have to go. We haven't even gone into the businesses that you've started and blah 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 and really deep detail because it matters less than the like why should we talk to Clinton? It's because well this guy has clear examples of how he's overcome the fear of death in his own life and overcome fears of public speaking because you can travel across the world and meet with people that are, in foreign government politics
Yeah.
and go hang out and go serving and be friends and negotiate a table. So like the other tertiary, like the fine granular details and the technical parts of your business experience, great, they matter, but
Yeah.
like we have to answer the question of why should we listen to Clinton and like these stories, the ability to tell the story that can resonate with an audience is my vote for why we should listen to this podcast.
Yeah. I agree with that. That was always kind of my thing growing up. I went to school for public speaking, but I
Mm.
knew at the time that I had no story to share that would resonate. And, you know, the fear of public speaking was something I overcame pretty early in life.
Exposure
But
therapy, right? You just kept doing it,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And through that, I think once I got sick, I was like, dude, this is it. This is my platform to be able to have
Mm.
impact. Um, because this, like you said, it transcends business. It transcends, this is something that everyone can relate to is illness and death.
Sure. Of
Um,
course.
and this intentional life thing, I was like, okay, I got to beat this thing first,
Hmm.
right? Like I got to beat this to be able
You
to
have your
talk about it.
challenge.
Yes. So I got to overcome the challenge first. And, after conversations with the doctors, the long story short was, okay, you got sick because of stress. You increased your cortisol for an extended period of time. You changed your chemical makeup. Your genes started expressing differently due to the chemical change in your body, creating this disease. And I was like, okay. So I am sick as a result of my thought process because stress is a result of thoughts.
Yep.
And they were like, yes. And I was like, okay, so if I can change my thought process, I can change the chemical balance and I can reverse this. They're like, we have no idea how you're going to do that, but yes. And I was like, okay, that's, I got Richard downloading all the information to me. Like, if I fail, whatever, I die. I get cancer, I go into liver failure. It is what it
You've
is.
accepted the alternative. So now
So I'm
you're
like,
free to act in your own best interest.
so it's like, now let's go hard with this. I'm going through this EOS model. So that's like the first example of, the law of attraction that we were talking about to just like circle it all back. That was like, I attracted in my opportunity to define my character.
Hmm.
Then the second opportunity, second part of the law of attraction was like, okay, this EOS model, all about using the key components of your business, tools used to strengthen each component. When you use the tools and you input information, they give you a refined data set that make you more aware of the issues within your business at the root of them, and you can make the changes necessary to move in the direction you want. I was like, I can apply that to my life. That's super logical. Let me dataitize the emotions in my life so I can better understand them objectively. And then that will aid me in my assistance to change my emotions and my thought process around things. If I can, because like we all get stressed, right?
That's
Like,
to be human.
yeah, that's the most normal thing ever. Now, the unnormal thing is how long we stay stressed.
Mm.
And that was the result of my disease, was how long I stayed stressed. So that's the root problem. I identified the root problem in my life was the amount of time that I remained stressed. So I was like,
I
I
love
think,
how you frame this problem though around how do I, it's not how do I avoid stress. It's how do I bring my stress back down to baseline.
yep, that's the skill that I wanted to strengthen.
Hmm.
It's, it's reframing negativity and in essence mastering stress. Like it's always a part of life, but if
Yes.
I can be the master of it and I can reframe the negativity in shorter and shorter and shorter time frames by having an awareness of all of the input information in my life, then
Think
I
about
will be in a better position.
think about any high level athlete, right? So an easy example could be like a Lance Armstrong or a cyclist. Their goal is not to reduce their heart rate when they're bicycling at maximum effort. Their
Yeah.
goal is to have a resting heart rate that means that when they're not doing the thing, they're chilling and that
Hmm.
they can recover faster.
Yep.
And it sounds like you're taking that same type of mindset to stress levels in entrepreneurs. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Because it's by equipping yourself with the ability and the skill of reframing your perspective in shorter time frames, you're creating less lag in your decision making, your clear-headed decision making. So like that was kind of like my goal, and I started using key components of my life and creating tools that like when I put in information, I had more detailed information, more detailed data sets, which then the equation that I looked at it is I needed to facilitate more awareness of how all of the external situations in my life impact me energetically and emotionally. If I can facilitate an awareness through collecting data sets on how everything impacts me emotionally and energetically, I will develop over time an understanding of how I interact with the world, just like factually. And if I can develop this understanding, then I will act with intention with my best interest in mind over time. And
You
I will
just
do
made
the
a
right
meta
thing.
scorecard to steal an EOS tool. It's like
Exactly.
you've developed a scorecard, but not for like your business KPIs. Sure, have that
Hmm.
table stakes, but for how are you interfacing with stimuli in the external world and as it pertains to your specific
Yeah.
desired state of mind.
And then, so after doing all of that, and that's exactly it, after like coming up with all these different tools and modifying some EOS ones, creating my own and beta testing it all, after a year and a half of doing all this work, collecting all this data, I went back. I was getting regular testing done every blood work every 3 months, MRIs every 6 months, colonoscopy every year. Um, Go to the doctors. The key indicator of this disease is your liver enzymes.
Mhm.
I lowered all my liver enzymes back to baseline. In a year and a half, it's been 4 years now, a little over four, come up on 4.5. Haven't had another liver episode. So at this year and a half mark, I go back to the doctor and he's like, dude, I have no idea how you did it, but like, there's no 100% way to say that you cured this disease because we can't even like, there's too much unknown about it. But whatever you've done has worked. And I think for all intents and purposes, you have, cured this disease. So like that was the other, law of attraction. It was like a little more scientific though, like an action based. It was really clear steps looking back. The beginning,
Sure.
it wasn't very clear steps, but I was like, okay, I'm in control of my body, not succumbing to the concept of like things just happen. I wanted to happen to life a little bit more. So I went, okay, I have to train my brain to signal to my body to change. And that's what this whole process was like, the law of attraction was a result of me being like, I need to change the way my neural pathways work so I can signal for different physical outcomes within my body. But it was just cool. Like, I think that's like a really strong example of the law of attraction, like bringing in this thing that was bad for me to have a good result at the end and being able to like understand that like I did call it in because I think a lot of people in those situations have difficulty and kind of fall into, understandably so, a victim mentality. You know, like when you get sick, it's tough to remain positive. I was lucky enough to have all these precursor events happen to like indicate that this was something that I created.
You know, this might be one of the most important business podcasts without explicitly for the purpose of trying to be a business podcast. Because the same theory is it's the theory of constraints, which I find talking with EOS implementers, being myself as a fractional CMO, if you don't figure out what is the dragon you need to slay, the number one threat, the number one constraint that's holding your business back. For you, it was the diagnosis with your liver, and you understand that if you don't handle this disease, you're
Mhm.
fucked.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
blunt, you
Yep.
know? So it was like, okay, this is the mission. It's a singular purpose, solve for X,
Yeah.
right? In a very extreme life or death, high stakes thing.
Hmm.
But it's the same thing for businesses too.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't prioritize the thing, then the most important thing and identify what it is, get that diagnosis with evidence, and then have a plan to get it under control, your business will also die, or it will
Yeah.
become a miserable state of affairs that you'll maybe sometimes wish for the alternative, right?
Hmm.
And it's the theory, it's like it's over and over and over again. It's figure out what the constraint is, number one, figure out how to solve it, and then find the next constraint, right? Because I'm
Yep.
sure you didn't just solve your liver and be like, oh yeah, every other thing in my life fell into place. You probably also then said out, okay, now my dream is this ideal life in Bali. And now you're going on a plane soon to go out and start to build that life. Like you've then made a what's next, right?
Yeah. I think the big thing, like what I like set out to do was, and this is, part of the stuff I pulled from EOS was there's so many components of your life. There's not a million. There's like, I came up with five, but like understanding to be able to like the liver thing got fixed because I put in all the time on all the other areas. Like the liver thing was the big one to fix. But to fix that, I had to fix 27 other things.
Correct.
And I knew that I needed to like lay it all on the table and see it all. And then one at a time. Because it went from like relationships in my life, not even romantic, just friends.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, how are these people impacting me? And I created, I used the people analyzer and then I modified it to be based around support emotionally, physically, professionally. And then I gave them a rating. And then I listed examples that supported my ratings for the top 30 people that I interact with the most. And I started doing that and I started getting this clear understanding. And then I was like, wait, I need to do the inverse. I need to evaluate my contribution of support to the relationship in each category and list examples. But it was like as I got more granular into the little things, the big thing got fixed because I was identifying all of the like the issue wasn't my liver. The issue was the relationships I had in my life weren't right. I wasn't tracking and setting the objectives to reach my goals. I wasn't paying attention to how everything in my life, like I would go surf for 2 hours before a call. I'm tired. I should only be surfing 30 minutes. Like
Mm,
pulling these little pieces, because when I surf for 30 minutes, I'm energized and I show up better. So like,
man, that is so huge.
so all those little things I think is like,
But even that, let's just drill into that observation,
mhm,
right? Understanding yourself, knowing that like maybe when you're 18, you could surf for 2 hours and then go right into a call.
yeah,
Like maybe, I don't know, but I'm
yeah,
assuming it's possible.
yeah,
Like same thing, if I was a college wrestler, so I remember I would work out 4 to 5 hours a day, every day, 2 or 3 sessions, like, and for some reason it like worked and it was fine. If
mhm,
I were to try and do one single day of that existence today, I would be dog shit for business for 48 hours.
yep.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's really creating that self-awareness.
But, if you take a 30-minute walk with your dog, you're getting the blood flowing,
Yeah.
and you can probably go in and do a great call. So
Hmm.
that applies to everyone.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. I think a lot of we were talking about this earlier, but like the pitfall of entrepreneurs, a part of it, and a lot of people is they're not like intentionally looking at like their life
Mm.
as a human. Just like pretty baseline, like they're not paying attention. They're allowing every day to slip by, and they're just doing the things, which is part of what you need to do. But like the reflection on how you're spending your time, how these things are making you feel, like I don't think we as humans are putting enough time towards that. I don't think we're being taught to do that either.
Clarity
That's not
break is
really.
the tool in EOS, and it's so important because if your calendar is 100% booked and you might be busy, you are might just be going on the highway to hell and just like ruining yourself and your business faster
Mhm.
versus than if you just cut that calendar in half and had a 3 hour chunk to just reflect.
Yeah, no, that the clarity break is such a massive tool, but I think those kind of things are really important. But I think circling it back to what you were saying, like getting good at being able to prioritize what's important, like what is the big challenge, is really, I think, the root of all of it.
Man, so true. Um, there is one recurring theme that keeps me so in love with this time of year. Not just spring, not just like this time, but I mean the end of one quarter, beginning of a new quarter, and these quarterly review sessions.
Hmm.
And even when I bring on a new client, right, for an example, because I love identifying, okay, what are the results of our thesis that, these were the 3 to 7 rocks or scorecard. This is what we thought was important last quarter.
Yeah.
Matching that back, how important was it really to the growth and the health of the business? And then setting new initiatives.
Hmm.
It's the most rewarding part of doing what I do. And I'm sure with EOS implementers like yourself and others, you almost need to get energized from helping others to see their constraint. And I think when it comes down to it, whether it's your your health and wellness like entrepreneur coaching, whether it's EOS, whether it's just developing distant lands, you
Hmm.
know, because when once you make that business plan goes to fruition, you're gonna be able to have other people come in and obtain a degree of self-awareness and self-actualization. So like whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's Clinton, myself, anyone listening, just take time every so often to really reflect and say, is this bringing me closer to who I want to be?
100%. I mean, that is the beautiful part of life. I think you and I are lucky enough where we've been able to make our profession a good chunk of that. We get to spend a decent amount of time doing that with other people and then ourselves. But I couldn't agree more. Like for anybody listening, I personally think like if you can, there's the quarterly, you know, I think if you can do it on a daily, a couple days a week,
Yeah.
a little journal, and I know that journaling's like overplayed, and I think journaling is the most overlooked tool to achieving your dreams
Hmm.
in the sense of the reflection standpoint. A lot of people think of journaling as like a diary, like talking about like the crush they have, or like, and they journal when they're emotional. They journal when they're upset. They journal when they're going through something hard. They journal when something really awesome happens. But like if you journal regularly, just about how you spent your time.
Mm.
Simply, what did you do today? Who did you talk to? I think it was Dale Carnegie mentions in How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a chapter in the beginning where he talks about it might have been him or someone else, but they every Sunday took like half of the day, sat down, and reviewed all of the conversations they had that week. And were like, these is how it went. This is what I liked about it. This is how I would do it different.
It was either him or Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, it was one of them. But my adaptation of that I think's even more powerful for the not even just the business owner, but your average everyday person that's not running a business. It applies to everyone. If you're just journaling about how you spent your time that day, where'd you go, who'd you see, what'd you do?
Hmm.
If you do that on the daily, if you do that once a week, if you do that twice a week, you're going to start reflecting on how you spend your time. And you're going to start seeing and building an awareness to, well, those activities seem like they're moving me towards what I want out of my life. Or, yeah, I'm probably not going to get where I want to go if that's how I'm spending my time, and it's just objective. And that's, to me, I think the most powerful thing anyone can do is to spend consistent time journaling, not emotionally, but just factually on how you spend your time. But if you can't do that and that feels like too much, finding a quarterly clarity break is really powerful as well.
Couldn't agree more. Clinton, speaking of time, you have a flight to catch here, not too long. Everyone listening, I never run ads in the show. I never want to. My only ask is that share this with someone if you think that'll benefit. Clinton, where can people find you to reach out and learn more?
Yeah, the best place they can go on LinkedIn, find me Clinton Crawford. They can email me at clinton.crawford. Clinton spelt like Bill Clinton, Crawford spelt like Cindy Crawford. So clinton.crawford at eosworldwide.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Really appreciated it. Everyone listening, appreciate you as well. Be well.
Right back at you, Ross.